I remember a friend of mine saying, "What are you doing in education? There's no money there. Your reward is in heaven." And I started to ask myself, what would it take to get into education? So for me, beyond it being a calling, my children were the motivation. When it comes to investment decisions, I'm not sentimental about it. When something is not working, it's not working. If it's not your expertise, it's not your expertise. It's like me pretending to be a banner. The world is looking for authenticity. When you're running a diversified portfolio, you have to know when to quickly cut your loss in an investment that is not working or is not churning out the way you expect it to churn out. In my previous life, I was a trader. I've made losses trading. I've made extreme profits trading. And one of the things you're taught as a trader is know when to cut your losses. You see, the thing about following that voice on the inside, most often than not, you never get it wrong.
People feel on the level that education has to be a calling before it's a business. What do you see in the educational space that you felt I could make a change in this sector? Hi guys, so this is another edition of our podcast, the Fed Admin Podcast. I think every time we find entrepreneurs, builders, dreamers, doers who are at the forefront of pushing an industry, shaping an economy and creating value, I really think for us in Africa, we need to celebrate such people. There's a lot to learn. I'm hoping we could put models in front of you, people you can learn from their journeys. And today's guest is someone I've known for over a decade. And I've seen her journey from Access Bank to Coronation to become an entrepreneur and literally succeeding, not just in the corporate sense, but even as an entrepreneur, scaling and breaking ceilings and doing amazing work. Iyobosa Sorae is our guest today. And you get a chance to meet her and we'll talk about everything she's done. So guys, stick around and take notes, drop a comment, share, subscribe, follow, and let's make this big. So guys, you will meet my guest in a bit. Right here we have IY Iyobosa. We call her IY. So Iyobosa, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I told them please convince Iyobosa she has to come because I know you're a little bit of an introvert, not too much out there, but you've built things that are out there. And even where people know a lot about the brands you've been building, not very many people know a lot about you. And on a level, I really think it's time to share with us some of the things that you've done. I mean, I met you as a young high flyer in Access Bank and you're doing amazing work.
Back, yeah.
Yes. And you went over to Coronation, but give us a little bit into your corporate life back then. What was it about you that made you, even as a young person, you stood out and you were very professional, well celebrated? What was unique about that?
I think for me, really, I would tie it to my upbringing, right? And if you permit me, I'll just go back a bit.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where you had extremely cerebral sisters and my brother as well. And you had a situation where you're coming back from school. The expectation is that it's first start. Then you used to have first position, second position, unlike what we have these days. We no longer really compare children in that way. But then you had first position, second position. And I remember I always had my sisters. She was always first. And I probably would be fifth, fourth, third. And my dad would talk for Africa. I mean, he was talking, but for me, it was building a bit of resilience. And I think that just going through all of that experience just put in me the spirit to never settle for less. And so that was my drive going up. I was always pushing myself. So once I got to a level, I was asking myself, what is the next big thing? What is the next thing I should be doing? And if you look at my career journey, it just simply played out. It was who I was, right? Never settling, never reclining, if I may use that word, back into comfort. Because you could say, oh, I'm a banker, I'm earning well, what else is there? But I was never satisfied because I just felt that there was so much more out there. And there is still so much more out there. So it is resilience. My upbringing had instilled that in me, and it played out all through my career.
Okay, I wanted to speak about turning point. Like now, you're sitting in the comfort of a good job, and you decided you want to do something entrepreneurship. But interestingly, you looked at a sector that is not so attractive to a lot of investors, like education. People feel on a level that education has to be a calling before it's a business.
Absolutely.
Right. But I wanted to speak about that transition of moving into education. What do you see in the educational space that you felt I could make a change in this sector?
I think for me, two things, right? When I was in Coronation, I'd done about 8 years in Coronation. I was in my 8th year. But somewhere in my 5th year, I was already feeling restless. And that happens to me when I feel I have, just poured out everything I have into an organization, and it was time for me to move on. And in my 50, I felt it was time to move on. But I didn't have all the answers. You see, this thing about moving on, or this thing about doing something great or something exceptional, it's not really that you have it all figured out. At times, you don't even know what you're doing. You just take the next visible step. And once you take that step, everything begins to line up. And so for me, when I was in that space where I was asking myself the question of what next? Right. Here I was an assistant general manager in a bank. I was earning very good pay. Right. I mean, when you talk about money, you're talking about two sectors in Lagos. It's the finance sector and the oil and gas sector. Now you have the tech sector, booming and all of that. But then it was finance and oil and gas. And so I had to do a bit of praying about it. Right. I had prayed about it, but I wasn't getting the clarity that I needed because everything was so up in the air. And then I started having kids. I had my first son. I think he was 2 at that time. And then I had my second son. And I was so sure, very certain, that I did not want them to go through the traditional education system that I had gone through. Yes, it was good back then. It served the purpose back then. But today, it is not enough because there's so many other things we should be doing that we are not doing in the traditional education space. And I started to ask myself, what would it take to get into education? So for me, first and foremost, beyond it being a calling, my children were the motivation, right? And I got to a point, we started out very small. When I say small, we started out very small with my boys, my 2 sons and their cousin, a girl. So all 3 of them, we just made a very cozy room and put them in there. And we said, okay, this is your daycare, right? And we got some caregivers to tend to them. But you see, the thing about just following that intuition, I call it the Holy Spirit, right? People could call it intuition. You see, the thing about following that voice on the inside, most often than not, you never get it wrong if you follow that voice. And so for me, that was the journey. And I decided to just follow as I was led. So we started out with the daycare. I still had my 9 to 5, obviously. I wasn't letting that go very easy, right? And within a year, we experienced growth. You'll be amazed. We had friends coming over saying, oh, we like what you've done here. Can we just leave our kids here and then pick them up once we're done with work? And obviously, I started thinking, okay, this looks like something we can scale. So it's not necessarily that you hear a loud voice saying, go into education, that's the space I've created for you. No, you have this feeling on your inside that this is the next step for you to take. And it happens with ease. You don't struggle about taking that decision. You flow into it. You grow into it. And what I had seen in my own journey is that as I took this step, capacity came in that space. Mind you, I was coming from the finance sector. It meant that I didn't know anything about education. I just knew that, okay, I wanted my kids to be taught right. I'm not saying there are no good schools. There are fantastic schools in Lagos. But for me, I knew what I wanted. Now, what that meant was that I had to then build capacity. So all of my 17 years finance experience was good, but it was time for me to go back to school and learn education. And so that's what I had to do for 3 years. I had to go back to learn the rudiments of just what is curriculum setting, what are the different curriculums we have, which of them should I be going for. So I put in the work. So it wasn't just, a finance individual, she has money to spend, or family money, they don't know what to do with it, let them get into education. No. So I put in the work to ensure that once we set up a space, or once we set up a school, or once we scaled, right, from a capacity perspective, we're not lacking. And so between my husband and I was the one that had to go through all of that learning curve just to ensure that, again, we're where we are today.
This is interesting, but I love the way you spoke about intuition, the ability to hear the voice within you. I remember the writer spoke about, in every soul is the sound of the genuine, and until you hear the knock of that sound and respond to the sound, life will always remain for you a mirage. But again, not very many people today, even adults, can trust their voice, the inner voice. Not many of them can trust their instinct because of what most people consider a sense of self-exile, where people were trained not to believe even in the very power of God that is in them, or in the wisdom of God. So they have to listen to the voice of people. So a lot of people got to the turning point where they couldn't move. They felt immobilized. So for them, the voice around was loud. Inside is saying, you can take an education. Someone is saying, not you. Another person is saying, please don't believe your own hype. And so the voices of everything is slowing them down. But just the quality of lady that you are, that could cultivate that internal capacity to respond to the call, were there defining moments that gave you trust, or the ability to trust your instincts as a young lady in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you for that question, Fedi. You mentioned something that got me laughing. Don't trust your own hype, Very, and it's true, because I remember on this journey, I remember a friend of mine saying, "What are you doing in education? There's no money there. Your reward is in heaven." And I'll tell you something. She went on to say, she was like, "Look, you've been a treasurer. What is this? This is like child's play, like just," and there's nothing worse than someone raining on your parade. You're so excited about something, and I'm sharing this just to further emphasize the noise from outside, the external noise that I had to deal with, right? And when I was told that, I really I questioned myself that day, because I was like, really, treasurer, I'm now doing education. How many students? 4, 5, 6 students. I mean, that was before we became what we were today. And it got to me. But I very quickly, and maybe you could also argue being an introvert helped, because then I'm not looking out for so many voices. I'm not asking for so many opinions. I'm just checking with my husband. Are we on the same page? And once we're on the same page, we've prayed about it, we're good to go, right? And so for me, it was very easy for me to shut out the external noise. And doing that then meant that I had to find strength from within. Do you see what I mean? Because, you see, my husband will always say something that, look, as long as you're an entrepreneur, you don't need to go in Nigeria, in Lagos. You don't need to go to Harvard. You see, Harvard is on the streets of Lagos. It will teach you everything. The real MBA is on the streets of Lagos. And he always used to say that when I was in my 9 to 5. He'll be like, look, you're in your 9 to 5. You don't know what is happening out there. You're like protected. You're like, it's like you're in you're in a bubble. So you're not living the real thing. And I thought he was joking until I started out my entrepreneurship journey. It wasn't easy, honestly. It really wasn't easy. But I think the defining moment for me, and again, I have to always go back to spirituality, because it was a very strong part of my journey. I think the defining moment when I was so sure of what I was doing was, as simple as it may sound, was when I was thinking of the anthem for the school.
Interesting.
I'm telling you. When I was thinking that was when I got the confirmation that, look, this is, Iyobosa, is not about money. In this season of your life, this is what you should be doing. I don't know what the next season will be, but for this season, I'm so 100% confident that I'm in purpose, right? And why do I say this? I remember when we're thinking of, because every school has to have their school anthem, right? And I was asking my team, so what is going to be the anthem? and they brought different things, but it just did not sit with it didn't sit in my spirit. And I remember just taking a nap, sleeping one day, and then the entire lyrics, everything, just the way the angels were singing, everything just came, and I jumped up. I was like, what, this is it. And the fact that I got that confirmation just again reaffirmed what it is I was doing. So for me, being able to lean back, listen within, and check with my maker, what are we doing on this journey? Right? An employee showing up for duty. What would you have me do? And then he gives you his downloads, and then you're able to go back. And I mean, it might sound all spooky and all of that, but that's how we differentiate ourselves. That's how we are where we are today. It's not because we are the smartest. It's not because, it's just because he's put something on the inside. You have shown up for duty. You have identified what he's put on the inside, and you have shown the willingness to be led by him. And so that's for me, that's the journey.
I love the way that you weave spirituality into lifestyle. That it doesn't have to feel religious, like all of those things, but it's not like I have this part of me where I'm spiritual, but everything is woven. But I want you to speak to two things. One of them is how you've been able to deal with major setbacks you've experienced. A friend of mine had told me that entrepreneurship feels like a contact sport. It's like everything is it's like you're a fish and trying to swim along ocean. Something has to go wrong. It's almost if you hire a staff and you realize it's not exactly what was said on the CV. You train somebody, just by the time you're done trying to get them in, someone is poaching them and giving them a little more than just extra. And on the Nigerian scene, almost every staff is a raise away from quitting. Right? Like, so
Absolutely.
you're dealing with that. Then you're also dealing with the context of rising prices of things that parents are saying, please, I'm dealing with inflation. You can't bring that to me. I have my cost. And, as a business person, you're having to absorb certain costs because you know that at the end of the day, you will have a pushback from the parents. But how do you deal with these setbacks, but also how you manage to keep your mental health stable? Because a lot of people say, I can't do entrepreneurship, it's too stressful for me, I don't even want to do that. But how do you keep your mental health in such a way that you can take these blowbacks and still sit back and pour your heart into what you're building?
Okay, to answer that, I'll share just an experience with one of our other businesses. So my husband and I were partners, right? So I've joined him in the entrepreneurship space, and we're building an empire, right? That's what people say. Let me go focus on building my empire. It's not as easy, as it's been said. I'll share a story on one of our ventures that I wouldn't say failed, but we found a way of exit. So you can't really call that failure. I remember when we were scaling, I think this was in 2020, just after COVID, I think it was 2022 or so. And we thought, okay, it was time to scale Sorae. We had not even started building the permanent space for the school. So we're like, okay, it's time to scale Sorae. And we're thinking, okay, what other business should we be scaling? And I remember that time my husband had come home and he was like, I think we should go into grocery stores. I think we should go into supermarket chains. And he had all these fantastic ideas. And I mean, it seemed reasonable. It seemed the right thing to do at that moment, but it wasn't the right thing, because it drained the life out of both of us. I mean, there's nothing as bad, or there's nothing worse than operating in something that is not your calling.
Yeah, no,
you see, that thing drained us. We're looking at ourselves and we're like, this was supposed to be churning in a lot of money. Our cash flow was supposed to increase, all of that. Everything was negative. It wasn't making sense. It was the dumbest decision we had ever made as a couple, right? I say dumbest because in hindsight, everything makes sense in hindsight. But then it wasn't adding up, and then we were bleeding financially. So we had to ask ourselves some very, very serious questions. I already gave up. My husband is the very resilient dogged at this thing. We must get to the road. But I was already like, nah, this is not for me. I can't do this. Panic attacks. You need to do this. You need to balance this book. You need to do all of that, because I was overseeing the finance aspect. So it was a lot. And we had 2 children. I had to cater to the home. We had other businesses we're setting up. Then we just started building the school as well. And this thing was just like, it was draining. And I think that's the word I can use. And I remember my husband coming home and feeling, okay, I know you've been here for the past 1 month. I'm just getting here. We need to exit. We need an exit plan. And I think it was in the midst of all of that we got a buyer that really just came and bought everything. So bought the entire business. But Fedi, when I say this thing was a lot, we're building, but something was draining the cash flow, right? And so we got to a place with the school, because people never really see this side of the story. You see, what they see is the glam, how successful people are. People had to sell their houses. People had to, you had to give up a lot of things just to ensure that the businesses that you have identified to be sustainable, right? And number one, well-funded, to ensure that they remain sustainable, to ensure that those ideas remain valid, right? And one of the effective ways we did that was quickly identifying, not being emotional about our decisions. You see, because a lot of entrepreneurs can be emotional about businesses, right? And they get attached. So the important thing is
but how do you know when to give up? Because first of all, there's still that thing that you go to church and they say, don't give up. The harvest is coming, and the business is killing you, and people don't just know how to give up. For some of us, if you give up, you have failed your father. Because in your family line, nobody gives up. So you're like, I'm hardcore. And then at this other side, you hear people say, I stuck it out, and after 10 years of collecting lashes from life, the thing broke even. So in a sense, sometimes it's about just knowing that, okay, this is where I draw the curtain, and then move on to something else. That delicate balance of saying, stay a little longer, for the harvest is coming. And please, brother, leave here fast before you die and focus on something. Not very many people know how to discern what that season and that decision should feel like, in a way that you got there before your husband did. Right? If in a situation where sometimes a couple and the other partner is saying, no, trust me in this one, we're going where we're going.
So the way we answer that, there's no one cap fits all. So you're not going to have, these are the 5 steps to know when to. I don't think that there should be anything like that, because experiences are different, right? What works for me might not work for you. And what I can take as an individual might not be what you can take as an individual. I understand Iyobosa. I might not understand Fedi. And so when I got to my decision, right, and I got there very quickly before my husband, who is the chief entrepreneur, right, I was mentally in a state that I couldn't even comprehend, because I was stressed out. I was burnt out. You can't function that way. It wasn't about going on vacation, and I was burnt out from the business. Just the mention of, we need to get to this supplier, I zeroed out. So for me, I was already at that space where I knew that, look, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to waste my time doing this. I don't have the passion for it. I don't see the vision. I just don't want to do it. This is not our calling. We shouldn't be here, right? Now, it did not necessarily mean that I then went to my husband and said, we must shut it down today. No, we had that discussion. But it took him a while. I had to be patient for him, because it was something I knew that eventually it will come full circle.
You didn't nag him into it.
No, you can't nag Mr. Sorae into anything. He's straightforward. You can't nag him into anything. But my point is, I was so sure it will come full circle. See, when something is not working, it's not working. If it's not your expertise, it's not your expertise. So it's like me pretending to be Ebano. So Ebano can have.
He's been doing it for years.
I don't know but yeah, Ebano can have 20 chains of grocery stores, and he will not even bat an eyelid. He can still sleep like a baby. But Iyobosa would have just one, and her blood pressure is high. So, so you need to know where your niche is, right? For me, execution, strategy, things that challenge my very core, right? Creating from the start, seeing what you have nurtured, then take a life of its own. That's where my passion is, right? You need to pay this supplier, pay that supplier, maybe not so much, right? And then if you go to my business partner, he already had a business that was scaling. And so from an attention perspective, the supermarket wasn't getting our full attention, number one, because for us, the brand is Sorae, and then the school was our priority. And so when we were taking a decision to say we need to exit, how do we exit without losing what we have invested? It was very easy, because these other things were there and they were taking our attention. Now, maybe if that was the only source of income we had, if that was the only business, maybe the level of attention would have been different. So I'm saying, when you're running a diversified portfolio, you have to know when to quickly cut your loss in an investment that is not working or is not churning out the way you expect it to churn out. Don't sit down there saying, oh, the losses are going to turn to profit. No. Remember, in my previous life, I was a trader. So it means that I've traded the market. I've made losses trading. I've made extreme profits trading. And one of the things you're taught as a trader is that know when to cut your losses. You must create your stop loss, your take profit, all of those things. So all of that has been wired into me. So when it comes to investment decisions, I'm not sentimental about it. Absolutely, I'm not sentimental about it. When it's time to exit, I'm very happy to exit, because you're exiting not to go sit at home. You are exiting into the next season of your life. Free your mind space so that you can get more ideas, so that you can gain the clarity to function for the season ahead. Otherwise, you drain yourself holding on to this season. And then the one that even gave you this season is telling you, I'm waiting for you in season 5, and you're still in season 3.
But talking about season, I'm knowing the type of person that you are. 5 years into an adventure, you might feel a sense and a sense of calling into another mission. Is this season calling you into anything else?
So, again, you never know. Honestly, you never know. There are a lot of ideas. There are things we're working on. I think, as a group, we recently just got into real estate, right? That wasn't in our portfolio. I think that came into the portfolio this year or late last year, right? Again, when you have a partner that is very driven, some entrepreneurs are born, some are made. I am made. I wasn't born an entrepreneur, right? Because my parents were educationists. So you see where the education came from. My parents were educationists, right?
One of them a lecturer?
My mom.
Okay.
My dad was also in the Ministry of Education. But for my husband, he was born an entrepreneur. So it means that there's nothing he can do but be an entrepreneur. Why am I highlighting that? Seasons are always changing. And we've partnered in a way that is so seamless. When you're working with someone, you want to complement the person. You don't want to operate from the same strength. Do you see? Your strength should complement his own strength. And so if I look at our portfolio today, I would say we haven't even scratched it in terms of the ideas that we have. Fedi, you're also an entrepreneur. When it comes to ideas, you have to pace yourself. You can't. There's a place for wisdom. Do you see? We have a lot of entrepreneurs saying, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur. And there's nothing they're entrepreneuring. Do you see? A lot of people can talk. You know, you were saying something that I wasn't, because again, I'm not out there making all of this talk. But a lot of people can talk, but not a lot of people can do the work. So I think there should be a balance, right? Yes, talk the talk, but be ready to roll up your sleeves and do the work, so that when you're talking, then you then have a history of what it is you have built.
Interesting, because I mean, the first guest who I had, when she worked in here, she said, how long have you guys been here? And I thought about it, I said, 8 years. She was like, 8 years, right? Being in a space and building and grinding is tough. But again, I wanted two things. There are people that might say, IY has it easy. One, she can raise money. Coming from Coronation, where you were even financing high-level capital stuff, or even Access Bank, means there is easy access to cash. But is that right?
Absolutely not. I was operating in a capacity that I'm not operating now. So I was representing a company. I was the treasurer of a bank. So if I was going to a meeting, I wasn't going as the Iyobosa, I was going as the treasurer of a bank.
And you have to pre-qualify if you want to get capital, like anybody else.
Exactly. You know, it's not that way. But I would say what has helped is the relationships you have built within your time in the finance space. And so now you want to raise money, you know who to go to, you know who to call, or you know who not to call. I think that's really the advantage. It's not necessarily that you get it easy. So it's not like they're lending to someone 40%, then they're saying, I come and take at 20%. No, there's no free lunch. So just like every other person, we have to do our work. When I say we as a group, from a leverage perspective, we have to look at how leveraged are we? Can we take on more leverage? Should we be taking on? I mean, all of those decisions, we have to make financial decisions just like every other person.
I know if you, this is something I think you should think about, because at the end of the day, I remember one of the courses in LBS, one of the lecturers has spoken about that a lot of Nigerian businesses fail. And it's not because of profitability, because of liquidity. That liquidity is about financial literacy.
Absolutely.
So that not very many Nigerian entrepreneurs do that. Sometimes the cash flow, the business is profitable, they just expand themselves, and that some of them don't interrogate cost enough, so that there are some cultural ways in which we allocate funds that bleed out what could potentially and keep the company sustainable. So growing up in Port Harcourt, I remember all these big transport companies, Ekle Dinichuku, Chisco, ABC, like they were all there. And then I just recently looked at it. Everybody's gone.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm thinking, why is it that African businesses can't? There's a part where our management challenges is there and people don't have succession about that. And you've written a book, which is one of the things I want us to talk about in this season. You want to teach kids about financial literacy.
Absolutely.
What would you say to parents that say, really, why would my kid be learning about money that early? Right. And why are you really helping kids to learn about financial literacy even at that age? What are you seeing that the rest of us haven't seen?
So I would say to parents, Freddie, thanks for that. I would say to parents, don't sleep on it, honestly, because the world is changing rapidly, right? Like I mentioned earlier, traditional education is no longer enough. Math, science, physics, whatever, it's no longer enough. What are those other things? Beyond financial literacy, there are other life skills your child can also be learning. But I stuck with financial literacy because that's where my heart is. That's the core. That's something that played a vital role in just sort of what my experience has been. And it's something that I have sat down and had asked myself, if I knew this earlier on, if I knew this when I was much younger in my teens, would the story be different? Would I have come into 25 years of age more prepared than I was when I was 25? Do you see what I mean? Fedi, there are young kids trading the stock market. There are young kids trading cryptos. Now, I'll put a caveat because, when you hear crypto in our setting is, akin to some. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about legit trading, right?
Building portfolio.
Building portfolios, understanding how money works is liberating. Understanding that you don't have to have a hoarder's mentality. Understanding that, and I'll tell you why this is very important. Because a lot of us parents, we're overcompensating our kids for what we think we missed out on. And so what that has then led to is we have a lot of entitled children who think, oh, my dad is a billionaire, my dad is this, my dad is that. But have they been taught to steward that wealth that will then be transferred to them ultimately? That's the question that parents should be asking. And what better way to learn stewardship than exposing them to these principles from a very early age? And so for me, about as against complaining about things, really, I think, again, it's just the doing mentality. That's how I operate. You see something, you think it can be better, you think it's not, do it, right? And so for me, it's not really, there are a lot of financial literacy campaigns. I mean, I don't think my book is the first, but I think the government and a lot of other people have done some things around financial literacy. But what I think that we are doing differently is that we are intentional in our approach. If you look at the book, we have taken the pain to sort of just lay out the activities a child can, as early as 6 years of age, a child can then begin to carry out, just to ensure that these principles are learned. And because in our space, we believe in hands-on learning, right? These activities are not just, so it's not a situation where you just read the book and then you drop it and then you're regurgitating what it is you've learned, right? It is you actually, it's project-based. So it is you actually carrying out the projects, right? Ensuring that those principles are embedded. So there's a demand on the parent and the child to participate in that experience. And so no matter how lay you are, if you call yourself, I don't have any knowledge of financial literacy, I can't teach my child. My book that I have written is a guide for I don't know what it is, but it's a guide for that parent that has zero knowledge of what the world of finance is. You can take that book and you can walk your child through it. And at the end of the day, your child then grows up not seeing money as the ultimate, like something that is to be won, like something that is to be gotten at every cost, right? But he sees money as a tool for a greater good, right? And that greater good can be in different dimensions. It can be in investing, it can be in impacting lives. These are the things we want to teach children. So they are not entitled, but they are stewards of what God has put in their hands, because I think I'll stop there.
So it's interesting. There's this book, I think it's called The Jewish Phenomenon. It was very popular about maybe 10 years ago. But the guy was talking about how the Jews have a relationship with money that allows for them to steward it in a very resourceful way. That's part of why they're less than 3% of the US population. But when you check behind some of the institutions today that control the economy, you find Jewish people at the very, very high echelon, whether it's actually in entertainment or even in finance. The Jews just have a way of controlling the wealth. And, people are asking themselves, what's so unique about their culture? So I love a book that is teaching children how to have a healthy relationship with money. One, you don't have the other extreme where they become dependent on their parents. Their parents are super successful, but they can't hold their own. They just want to depend on inheritance and then blow it. Or you have a situation where people are afraid of it and hustle too much, where money is the ultimate. They hustle back with no values. They even sacrifice character, everything, just to get a few bucks and have to win. So, but in a sense, would you want to give us a little bit of insight into some of these principles? I personally want to sit with my kids on your book and start telling them, okay, if you said one, have colo, here are your 3 colos, right? But maybe for some parents that have no clue, we all have heard about get your kids into early financial education. We just don't know where to begin. So they've said it enough. You are even feeling guilty, like, why will I do this? Because nobody has the tool. Now you've brought something. I don't know if you're planning to have a community, right, around it, where at least there could be like a way we could be guided into how we implement it. But just share a few principles from the book, and maybe what are your plans in terms of helping this knowledge cascade into mainstream?
Okay. You mentioned something about the Jews. I don't know if you've taken notice of Jewish businesses, how sustainable they are from generation to generation. You see, they tell you, oh, my great, 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 great grandfather started the business. Why do you think that is? It's because there's that transition of not just financial values, but values in general across the lineage. Now, back to your question, in terms of what are we doing, or are we planning to set up a community? We know that Lagos life is busy. So I can sit here and preach all the financial literacy I want, and it still would not be happening in most homes, because the truth is that dad would just not have the time to sit down with the kid. Mom is probably just so worked out because she's been all over the place from break of dawn till evening. And so we don't have the time to really sit with the book. And so one of the things we're thinking of is really to set up a community. So we're currently just building the blocks around it, and to see how effective it will be, because we just don't want to do something that has zero impact. We want to make sure that it is impactful. So for us, it's not necessarily about profitability. I'm sure you've written books, Fede, and you know that profitability is never one of the reasons why you write a book. Yes. It's because you've seen a problem, or you think that there's value that people would get from just engaging with your book. That's why you put pen to paper, right? So we're really putting up, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we will be coming up with a very concise strategy in terms of how we want to also address that. Whether it's setting up a kids club where parents can then bring their kids, and then we are responsible for walking your children through this experience. That's one option. Whether it's getting the parents to also come with their kids, right? So that parents are part of the journey. So you see, at the end of the day, we're all very busy, but we must make our time, because our children are our legacy. So if we're not spending time to build with these children, then don't be surprised when they tell you, I'm not interested in that business you want me to take over, because I have my life in America. Why should I come to, what am I doing in Nigeria? Which is the challenge a lot of parents are facing. They're facing. Children don't want to be responsible for anything. You see, all that. You wake up in the morning, I'm building an empire for you guys. I want you guys to be okay. They're not interested.
They're alone in your empire.
They literally can tell you to your face, Daddy, we didn't send you to do any of these things. So please. So you want to make sure you start very early. So you build that sense of responsibility in these children. So one responsibility, something the book also highlights, is just the principle of delayed gratification. Now, once you can master that principle, it then feeds into so many other things. It then means that you're able to understand investing from a very early age. Now, all of these things are brought to their level, because remember, we're talking of kids 6 to 11. We're currently working on 12 to 16, but now we have 6 to 11.
6 to 11, that's my range.
Yeah. So it's just communicating with them at their level. You want to start early. Whether it's principle of delayed gratification, whether it's the principle of gratitude. You see this thing called gratitude? That's a different discussion on its own. But I think that a lot more of our kids need to understand that principle, and it should be taught to them very early on, because they have grown up maybe in a space and in a time that is way better than where most of us, or what most of us experienced. A lot of them are growing up with roofs over their heads. You can afford your fees. You can go to good schools. For some people, that wasn't the experience, but they have worked so hard and they're able to give that to their kids. That child has to be taught gratitude. That child must understand what the mom had to forego. You see, dad and mom also went through delayed gratification to ensure that the child is getting what they are getting today. But we do all of these things without teaching the children those principles. And so they walk away feeling entitled. My daddy has this. I have this. If I ask my mommy, I get it. But you have never taken them through the experience of you getting to that point where you are able to provide all of those things for them. And that's what we want to teach.
This is interesting. I really think that you touched a bit about parenting, and that parenting today about just being present in the way that most parents provided but were never there. So relationship is not there, but they are parents, but it's not like you know your children, right? But in a sense, just being a 21st century mother, you might be lucky because you teach, so you're close to the kids, or you run a school, so you will have to investigate their curriculum. But for many busy parents at work, are there ways in which we can increase our ability to be present to our children, right? Is there a lifestyle design you think is possible for us to be able to, okay, here is how you can do it better, so your kids are not just get an idea of you, but they're emotionally voided of your presence?
Yes, so I wish I had a very good answer to that question.
Everyone is winging it.
But I think the answer is just be intentional, right?
Okay.
I don't think anyone can tell you, take some days off work, do this, do that, do what works for you, but be intentional. Because you see, all of that work you're doing, right? You're doing work so you can pay fees. You're doing work so that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you see that food that you're cooking, when it is time for you to eat the food, it tastes right in your mouth. Do you see what I mean? What I mean by that is you want to make sure that all of your investment pays off at the end of the day. Let me tell you what alluding to the fact that, I'm very busy, I don't have the time. Let me tell you what it can do. It's like an individual that just keeps investing. You're just putting money in ETFs or just putting money in anything. You're not checking the market. You do have zero clue. You don't know what's happening with your investment. And then all of a sudden, 21 years later, you want to come back to that investment and you want to say, I should have earned 40%. No, sir. There's no way you can earn 40%, right? The only way you could have gotten there is if you had looked at your portfolio, if you had restructured the portfolio, if you had gotten rid of stocks that were not working or that were creating losses, you had reinvested. You're taking all of those investment decisions if you had looked at the portfolio. And so there's no shortcut to looking at the portfolio. You just have to look. So there's no shortcut to looking at your child. You just have to be intentional. No matter how busy you are. I mean, dad and mom might not have the same amount of time. But what we preach to our parents in school is that at least one of the parents must be in touch with what is going on with the child. Because at the end of the day, that's your investment. You want to make sure that you have done all you can do. Humanly possible, being enabled by the Spirit of God.
Thanks so much for the perspective you're sharing on intention for parents. I think that parenting is such an important relationship in such a way that most parents are now unlearning the ways our parents raised us. Our dads will provide and you're fine. Now we're realizing that's not going to cut it for the next generation. But let's even talk about marriage. You have a partner who is your spouse, and you guys have built businesses. I have such challenges, you weather the storms. In the stats, it's changing. You will hear things like it's going over for 55 to 60% marriages now fail. Before now, it was 50-50. But in a sense, you guys have gone on for maybe a decade or thereabout. And
a decade plus.
A decade plus. Just what has been your defining principles that have kept you both alive and active and intimate still with yourselves, even as business partners, and be changing with times and challenges as married couples?
I think for me, really, it will be really just understanding the other person, because there's a role that really plays. And I kid you not, we didn't get there in the first year of marriage, because you're dealing with people with different personalities, right?
Cultures,
and
backgrounds.
Cultures. Interestingly, we're from the same, so the culture is not so different. But people that were already made in their own ways. He was an entrepreneur. I was again having a very good time being a banker, right? But I had to quickly realize that for us to succeed, there was a role I needed to play. And for me, that role was knowing when to, Bible says knowing when to abound and when to abase. Is that the word?
Yes, abase and abound.
Yeah. So for me, it was knowing those two things. And what I mean by that is knowing when to be so vocal with my perspective, with my opinions, with my strategies and all of that, and knowing when to take a step back and say, he needs to lead. Allow him be the leader that he's been called to be. And he's been called to be that leader not by society, but by God himself. And so I think that when you try to stifle a man, again, I hope this is not taken out of context, but when you try to stifle a man in that leadership role, you begin to experience a lot of conflict because he's looking to play the role he's been called to play. You're not getting it because you also you're a leader in your own right. We've all been taught that we are leaders, right? And so the issue of submission has been thrown out of the window. But there's a place for submission, right? And when I talk about submission, and I'm not saying dying to your dreams or any of those things. Your dreams are valid, but it is partnering with who God has put in your life in a way that, one, they feel respected, they feel heard, and they feel that they are the leaders that they've been called to be. And then you also need to realize that in working with that person, your dreams are valid. You're not losing yourself. You're not less of yourself. And if you can come to that realization, if both of you can come to that realization, it then becomes seamless going forward. Because then you know when to be all out and you know when to just take a step back and say, you know what, let him do his thing. And I think that I had to grow into a place of maturity to be able to really understand this and begin to implement it in our union.
So, I'm curious as to, honestly, well, you've been a Christian for a long time, but is this position possible without spirituality? Because again, I'm very much in the millennial Gen Z world. So most of the people I interact with are people who are young. And I can tell you, I'm sitting with couples and submission is a tough one for women. They question the way it was played out in the Bible. They question how their mother experienced it. So a lot of women have been wounded by patriarchy. They will tell you, my mom was a very loyal housewife and their fathers in their 50s discovered a young woman and created a second life for himself, leaving the woman hanging and moved on. And so they don't want that situation where a man would tell them what to do, how not to do it. And so leadership too, for most of the women, leadership is something they want to interrogate because even churches are caught in the middle now. Some pastors are trying to navigate modern ideas of what it means in terms of, if we stick to scripture in the way that scripture puts it, it's a little too tough for the women, right? So they want to find a middle position that is effective in the 21st century. But for most women, is it possible that they can still see beauty in submission that does not denigrate or dehumanize, but enhances, right? So what role did your spirituality help you? And two, the person you married, there's also a sense that most women will be like, the man has to earn my submission or has to earn my respect. And the man is still saying things like, oh, I need to feel respected. And it's almost a chicken and an egg. One person is saying, give me respect and I'll be respectful. The other one is, I'll earn your respect and I'll give you respect.
Respect is earned.
So
not given.
No one is moving that very fast. But you were talking as a modern woman. I'm quite really, really interested in how you've been able to, no two marriages are the same, but every marriage is a reflection of the people. You guys have been able to find a dynamic that's even allowed you guys to build together. I have friends that will be like, no, I can't partner with my wife, it's going to blow up. Because somewhere along the line, it's just too stressful. Like, they'll take work home, take home to
Absolutely.
work, right? So you guys just keep it neat, but you guys must be very well adjusted adults, right? I would say maybe healed adults, because everyone's talking about trauma. So in a sense, I'm still really keen on you said you grew. What helped that healing journey, and how much role did your spirituality play?
Okay, I think for me, again, I would say it depends on how you view submission. It depends on how you interpret submission, right? For me, submission is not a man telling you, you have to stay at home, you have to take care of the kids, you have to work, you shouldn't be working. No. That's not what I'm talking about. You see, because all through my journey, I have worked. All through my journey, God has helped us and we have been successful. Even at career-wise, I was successful. I had a very supportive husband that always said, go for it, you can do it, go for it. So again, I would say I'm blessed. I guess we're all blessed. I'll say I'm blessed. But beyond that, Fedi, I could also be practical. I always tell myself, you have to at times you just have to walk from the answer backwards. There's no need fighting a losing battle. And so if I know that going head on is dead on arrival, right? This battle I want to take on head on is dead on arrival. What should I do as a reasonable individual? What should I do as somebody that wants to maintain my peace of mind? Because my peace of mind is very important. I wouldn't trade that for anything. It means that I have to quickly scale back and say, okay, as against reacting this way, as against taking this action, what other action can I take? Still be able to address the issues, but in a way that is acceptable to both parties. Fedi, I kid you not, it did not come easy. I think I'll be doing a disservice to womanhood or just even to the world at large if I tell you, oh, we had it all easy peasy or something like that. Nah, it required a lot of work. It required a lot of just looking at yourself and telling yourself the truth. It also required me really understanding who I was with.
So self-awareness and other awareness.
Exactly. Extremely important. Extremely important. Because when you understand who you're with, then you can then map out a strategy on how you want to work with the person. Do you see what I mean? I know my husband is an entrepreneur through and through. I would be foolish to say, I don't want to discuss business. Let's just be doing lovey-dovey. It can't work because he's a business person. And so I should be comfortable enough to discuss business when he wants to discuss business. Yes, there will be boundaries, but that's what works for us. And if we both get excited discussing business, then so be it. That's us in our world. So just find what works for you. What works for Nkechi's mom might not work for Adana's mom. Do you see what I mean? Comparison. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. stuff, they look like this. Oh, they don't do this. Just stop all of that and face what is in front of you. And I think just in closing on this question, I think that for you to totally understand someone or even understand someone to a reasonable extent, you have to go back to the manual.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? You have to go back to the manual. And what does going back to the manual means? It means you have to go back to the God that created the individual. This individual that you think is so difficult standing in front of you. And then ask him certain questions. And he will provide answers in a way that you would understand. Not as easy as I'm saying it, but it does work. And for me, that is what has worked.
So, I remember the book of Proverbs says, lean not to your own understanding.
Absolutely.
In all your ways acknowledge. Even in the ways of marriage and dealing with your spouse, you also have to lean on God's understanding to be able to get the wisdom to move forward. So 3 questions to bring this to a wrap. The first of the last set of questions will be, a young lady out there, 15, disillusioned about what she wants to do with her life, and seeing a year-old today who is done so much amazing. I want you to speak to your 50-year-old self, and if there were key advice you feel you should have, if you had been told then, will make your journey different, what would that advice be for the 15-year-old?
15?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I were to advise myself, I'll really say careless, really, because I think we care too much what people say. We care too much about the opinion of others. Because just imagine you weren't thinking of, oh, what will Fedi say? If I walk into this place, what would they say my shoe is? Just imagine you did not carry all of that pressure. How authentic you will be. And so the world is looking for authenticity, right? So if you can get to that place, I will tell my 15-year-old self, embrace your story. Be as authentic as you can be. and let people see that authenticity. And you see, remember, again, we go back to the scripture. A man's gift
makes room for him. If a book has changed or altered your life positively, which book would you call as a defining piece for your life?
Again, for books, I do a lot of spiritual books, right? And I don't know if this is a good place to wrap it up in terms of books. But I know you said 3 questions. I think it will be a book by Andrew Womack.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've learned so much from him in this journey called or on this journey called life. I think for me, it has beyond the Bible, because there are times you just need some nuggets from other things, and you want to get it from books. Because I do a lot of reading. I think for me, it would be where he explained authority and power. And so for me, I have carried that with me all through, understanding my authority as an individual, as a child of God, and understanding the power that I wield from the Holy Spirit. Those 2 things. And if you look at my journey, like you mentioned, Fedi, you can't separate spirituality from living. You can't. I mean, even if you look at marriage, you can't. Can people do marriage without God? Even if you're not a Christian, there must be some form of God you're doing in that thing called marriage. Do you see what I mean? Life is spiritual. And so I have learned that I should bring everything that I do, all of my experiences, under the influence of God. And so working with that mindset has just liberated me. It's like opening a door and I'm coming out and I'm exhaling, because all of a sudden I'm appreciating the journey, right? We can get so caught up in our journey that we don't take a step back to appreciate how far God has brought us or how far we have come, right? And so in just spending time with that blessed man of God called Andrew Womack, not physically, of course, by way of reading his book, I have been liberated in a way that I see myself for who God has called me to be. I understand purpose. And when you live life with purpose, then everything becomes meaningful, not meaningless, if that makes sense.
So guys, I think it's been a very, very interesting conversation with Iwa, and just even understanding her turning point from corporate Lagos to even entrepreneurship, understanding your intuition as a signal for you to know when to move or when to stay, dialing into your expertise. More importantly, if you are interested in building something with your spouse, I have said a couple of wisdom that you need to run with, knowing when to move forward, how to speak, when to speak. It's about not just winning the battle and losing the war, but winning together. So it's important you lean into figure out the lessons here. But more, again, it's just something that I always love about her answers. Spirituality cannot be disconnected from living. We need to bring spirituality in when you're at your weakest, when you need to find your way, finding that connection with God that allows for you to really, really do life. So if you're at a point in your life when you feel like I'm facing hard knocks, you're not having to figure out life on your own, leaning too much on your own understanding, you might want to learn from this podcast. Guys, drop a comment. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to do this with you. Thank you again for joining with us.